Okay, so good evening and good morning, everybody. So, and big congratulations to everybody for celebrating our 75th anniversary of independence. Uh, and today we have a very special guest from Protiviti, the director of Protiviti, Madam Jayanti RV. And before giving the introduction of Madam, I would request our board of director member, Sri R.K. Anandji, to give a brief introduction about the missions, visions, and what we do about CRFC. Sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Kashyap, for giving me this opportunity to introduce our council. Ma'am, the Climate Risk and Finance Council based out in US with our operations in other parts, as most of us are in India, are a non-profit company. We are a network of the practitioners pertaining to finance, academia, and sustainability. So we come from different fields, and we all perceive at CRFC that this climate risk is a complex thing for everybody to understand, and especially we in the financial world have to understand. So what this council is doing, this is trying to, has a vision now to simplify this for the general understanding and guide the stakeholders about the likely impacts it may have on their field and work out the possible solutions and the certain tools in their hand to uh, mitigate and manage this risk. So in our vision, we are doing that the climate related financial risk management will provide the new, additional and sustainable capital for the world to work upon. And we, in a way, are in our mission providing the thought leadership to the stakeholders of the climate risk. And in a way, we are trying to pave the way in the way of the organizations and especially the this financial world to understand this risk in identification, its impact thereupon, and work out the practical tools to implement for the risk mitigation and management thereof. So this is all, this mission is happening as you are watching on the webinars in a very research-based, data-based approach we are into, and the council is glad to have some very nice networks also in the immediate past 1 month, and we are on that path. So this is the brief about our council, and now I request Kashyap to take the proceedings further, and I think we don't take much time into that.
So I would request Shashi Madam to give a brief introduction about our speaker, Jayanti Madam.
And hello, Jayanti. I think very impressive, I must say. And I'd just like to introduce to the audience. Jayanti has been he's a director at Protiviti, and she has 15 years of experience in sustainability and climate change, which is really, very impressive for us to listen from her. And she also experienced in energy, sustainable energy development, high performance design, and built environment, resource efficiency. And this in this session, actually, when she said she's non-financial, I'm really happy that she is non-financial, because it's something that a financial person needs a perspective about the other side, which I'm sure Jayanti will be able to give us. We are very glad to have you here, and with the varied experience in sustainable, and sustainability and climate change. I think we are just waiting to hear from you. So with this intro, I request that the session be
Yeah. Please,
started.
ma'am.
Yes.
The floor is all yours, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Shakti ma'am. Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Kashyap, the entire CRFC team for me to have a session and present here on a webinar specific to climate risk from a non-financial perspective. So let's. What I have tried to do here is give you an overall brief on what is the climate risk all about, and then take forward in specific to what is the regulatory landscape that is happening globally around, and what is the future regulatory reporting standards that we're going to be looking around for climate risk. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes,
we
yes.
can.
Yes. Yeah. So I would be covering quickly on overall risk reporting and the regulatory landscape globally that is happening around. Before we start to that, I thought we'll give a quick snapshot what has happened last year and the most expensive disasters on climate change last year, 2021. The first one being the Hurricane Ida, which has resulted of around $65 billion in damages, which happened similar month, almost a year back in August. The second one being the flash floods, which happened across different countries of Europe, which resulted in almost $43 billion in damages. The third one was the winter storms of Texas. Here again, the entire state went blackout for the longest time in 20 years, which costed them around $23 billion in damages. The fourth one, flash floods in China, which resulted in around almost 17.6 billion in damages. Fifth one, Canada flash floods in British Columbia. Yes, this tool went around damages of around $7.5 billion. This is just a quick snapshot on the last 5, and we know that we're already here in 2022. We've almost reached $72 billion in disaster in this year by the first half. Which is a little bit lesser than what UN predicted. UN predicted around $91 billion would be our climate risk disaster value. Yes, we all know climate change is no longer a future threat. Some of its effects are already being felt. Either it is rising temperatures that are increasing, the frequency of devastating weather events such as hurricanes, fires, floods, droughts, extreme heat, extreme cold. In addition to their direct impact on the population, these effects bring about substantial economic cost. Although the worst predicted impacts of climate change are still far away, in the future, some financial risks associated with climate change and climate change mitigation efforts are more imminent, I would say. And climate changes are impacting all areas of the economy. Climate change specifically presents around 2 types of risk. One being the physical risk, those stemming from increased frequency of extreme weather events. The second one being transition risk, those resulting from rapid repricing of financial assets as a result of changes in either a policy or shift in a consumer and a investment demand. So we will see how these 2 risks has been addressed towards the different standards and ESG reporting that is happening globally. What is ESG reporting? We'll cover on this. So globally, addressing to this climate change, every country has come up with a different regulatory focus has been given on climate change and sustainability. Either it is from it's coming from the government, some are coming from the non-government, some are coming from the stock exchanges of different countries addressing the listed companies, and still many are under voluntary adoption as well. So for example, in India, we have this year, after so many years of evolvement of ESG, in India, last year, SEBI made it mandatory for a BRSR reporting for this financial year for the top 1,000 listed companies in India. In US, the SEC has created a new subpart in their Form 10K on climate-related matters, especially focusing on TCFD. We will talk about it more in detail. This is just to give you a snapshot what is happening around globally in respect to regulatory framework. Moving on, what is ESG? Yes, ESG is an acronym for environmental, social, and governance. ESG takes the holistic view that sustainability extends beyond just an environmental issues. So this is the ESG as such known, and it is also best characterized as a framework that help stakeholders understand how an organization is managing its risk and opportunities related to the E, S, and G criteria. Environmental criteria refers to an organization's environmental impact, which we have been just covered previously, and the risk management practices the organization is addressing to. These include both direct and indirect emissions, the GHG emissions, stewardship over their natural resources, and the firm's overall resiliency against physical climate risk. Social pillar refers to an organization's relationship with its stakeholders. Factors like factors that a firm may be measured against, including human capital management metrics, like for example, fair wages, employee engagement metrics, etc. But also an organization's impact on the communities as well, in which it operates, and on its supply chain management or supply chain partners specifically. This is particularly those in developing economies where environmental and labor standards may be less robust. The third pillar being on governance. Governance refers to how a company is led and managed to better understand how leadership incentives are aligned to stakeholder expectations and how shareholder rights are viewed and what types of internal control exist to promote transparency and accountability by the leadership. We will see this, how this transforms into an ESG reporting standards. We all have been, all professionals who've been working around this ESG and sustainability and climate change. We all have been hearing about different terminologies like TCFD, SASB, IR, DJSI, CDP, Sustain Analytics, True Value Labs, MSCI. So I've just tried to put this in the 3 buckets. The first one being it's a publishing guidance for voluntary disclosure often with companies' feedback loops. They are something like TCFD, SASB, IR, GRI, Global Reporting Initiatives, and the colorful boxes you see is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The next 2 buckets that you're seeing is these are the raters. So first type of raters are they request data from companies via questionnaires like DJSI, CDP, Bloomberg, or Refinitiv. The third one are they create assessment of companies and provide ESG rating based on public or a private information to sell it to investors. So these are the 3 different buckets that you can put them across. Moving forward, I shall be explaining in detail what they are. CDP. We will look at actually more on this publishing guidance. We are not touching upon the raters. We will be here looking at the regulatory landscape, that is the standards that is around these. The first one being CDP. CDP is again a non-profit organization and runs a global disclosure system for companies, cities, states, etc. to manage their environmental impact. CDP does not cover the social and the governance aspects of ESG. Next is GRI. GRI is nothing but Global Reporting Initiative. This was way back founded in 1997. This is the first accountability mechanism. Here, again, they started with environmental, but they also broadened to include governance issues, economic, social issues. They include 2 major divisions on it. That is, one is the universal standards, set of universal standards, and set of topic specific standards to that specific type of industry. So these are the 2 major headings under the GRI, and this is one of the rating systems which is universally globally used, and this is also used by number of stock exchanges and regulators around to referring to GRI standards. IR, again, it's an IIRC. Integrated reporting is a global coalition of investors, regulators, standard setters, accounting professionals, and NGOs, etc. So they have come up with a rating called IR, integrated reporting. And this framework takes up a principle-based approach and provides questions and guidance, and that how a company should ask and follow as they prepare their entire report. Next three are the SASB standards, that is Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. This is again an independent non-profit organization, and this is a disclosure of financially material sustainability information. We will see this in detail on later part of the presentation. And SASB addresses around 77 different types of industries, industry-specific financial performance against the 3 pillars E, S, and G as such. TCFD. TCFD is nothing but Task Force on Climate-related Financial Disclosures. This was established in 2015, and this is made even mandated for all asset owners and managers, as signed on a UN Principles for Responsible Investment, PRI, Principles for Responsible Investment. So this has been mandated, most of the European countries and the G20 countries. Moving on, again, this, yes, when we see so many different standards, yes, we can understand there has been, this segment has been evolving over the last more than 2 decades, and there's a lot of confusion in for the investors to look at these ESG reports or a performance of a company. So yes, 2 years back, SASB, IRC, GRI, CDP all came together and put forth that yes, we can come up with a comprehensive one single standard, which was under the board International Financial Reporting Standards. So this they have already come up with their standards called ISSB, International Sustainability Standards Board. So how this convergence is happening is the ISSB does developed by under IFRS. They are going to be including SASB and TCFD as the main parameters to be considered. That is, what it would do is it is actually again, this is a sample. The standard is already out for public comments, which was closed like a couple of weeks back, July last week. The comments for the public has been closed, and this is going to be coming into action by end of this year. So that next year, all companies will be moving towards this ISSB standards. So ISSB standards, I shall let you know how the overall architecture of the standard is done. The architecture is based upon, as I was saying, the TCFD as the structure. TCFD has 4 core elements: governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics targets. So it's going to be taking up this 4 core elements of TCFD, and also the alignment is specific to the industry basics or the thematic or the cross industry requirements. So this will be the overall general requirements of the reporting that will again follow the SASB standards. So these are the 2 overall, the focus on how the investor audience and the overall enterprise value of the organization can come out. So that is their intention. And they and as already there are so many companies which are already been reporting under different standards. So in case if there is no reference to any of these, the company organization can still go ahead and refer other standards as well, wherever certain things are not addressed in the beginning in ISSB. So in ISSB, we have 2. Before going into detail here, I would like to add on something here is, what is this reporting and ESG reporting? What is the intent for it? Now, I think there is a clear picture now what is ESG is, and what are the different standards available, and what is the future now, this ISSB standards. A company looking at these risks, which we were talking about, both the transition risk and the physical risk. So these are the 2 major risks that a company needs to disclose, and not disclose. Before even disclosing, the organization should be able to visualize and have a vision and a target towards achieving those goals, how to mitigate these risks, right? So the reporting is actually an outcome of these thoughts and the vision. Report shouldn't be an alignment, like it's not like a, there is a term that yes, there is a lot of greenwashing around this happening. But yes, to address all those, the reports are being evolved, and there are a lot of regulatory framework that is coming around to stop these greenwashing. Organizations should be looking at what is the actual climate risk and risk management, what is required in their organization. And these standards could be taken as a guide for them to start this process. There are many companies where no action has been taken on these, like small companies or not listed companies, because these regulatory frameworks in future are going to be finally transferring to those organizations as well, not only the listed companies. So the companies who are already been reporting, they're trying to become leaders in these, where they are already addressing certain climate related risks. Whereas companies who are starting from scratch should look at these standards and start aligning those metrics and things that we are talking about right now. I will get into detail how this SASB standards and how this ISB standards is going to be addressing these issues. The first, it is divided into two standards, which I was saying. The first one is a general requirements, which is an exposure draft. The second one is a climate exposure draft. So the climate exposure draft is related to the TCFD. The general requirements is related in alignment with the SASB standards. Second one, the first one, this general requirements is companies are required to provide material information on all significant sustainability related risk and opportunities necessary to assess the overall enterprise value. I will explain this in detail more further. So this standards, again, it almost addresses all 77 different type of industries, right? The second one being the TCFD, more alignment, the climate related risk and opportunities aligned towards the TCFD recommendations, and it requires disclosure of information about physical risk, like the flood and the drought and other things, transition risk, if there is any regulatory change or pricing and things like that. The third one being the climate related opportunities. Is there any new technology and things that come up from here? So SASB standards, as I was saying, it addresses almost 77 different types of industries, again, under these 11 overall categories, like consumer goods, extractivism, mineral processing, financial, services, transportation, healthcare. So almost most of the industries gets covered under these sectors. And next coming is the materiality map. So this is something very, very important to be looking upon when a company is trying to address these climate change risks against these three pillars, E, S, and G. So in this slide, you're just seeing what is SASB standards materiality map is about. It addresses upon around 5 major headings, which addresses the three pillars, E, S, and G: environment, social capital, human capital, your leadership, and business ethics, etc. Business product and development as well. So these 5 major headings, again, under them, what are the key materiality aspects? So materiality aspect is something, is not, yes, the standard gives you an alignment, but an organization needs to understand this even in depth before even starting this exercise on an overall ESG reporting. So here, like, for example, if you look at this first one, which is the entire mineral processing organizations, if you look at the GHG emissions, so these organizations have a huge impact on their greenhouse gas emissions, because there's a lot of emissions that is happening in the manufacturing process in itself. For them, the GHG emissions, air quality, their energy management, their water management, the waste management, their ecological impacts, these are all become very, very key performing indicators. Nothing but KPIs. The materiality map can also be called as KPIs for those organizations under the 3 pillars, E, S, and G. If you look at other companies, like say, for example, financial, for the banks, if you look at the entire environmental impact of these banks are almost nil. So SASB here, what I highlighted is these needs to be mandatorily reported in alignment to SASB standards. The others are at voluntary level. So if you look at the social side, it is more important with respect to customer privacy or data security, and things like that, and your product quality. So these are very important to financials. For example, in banks, when you look at their specific, when you're looking at an ESG, when they are preparing their ESG report and they're targeting a specific set of audience, their investors and things like that, their KPIs stand on their entire loan portfolio. Whether these banks are actually on their entire loan portfolio, what is the percentage of loan that goes for environment friendly projects. For example, if banks are already a funding or a coal plant or a thermal power plant or an oil and gas company, then their overall ESG score will actually be low, and their impact on the environment is, though the E part of it, when you see the GHG emission, there's not much of importance, but their overall goal, when their entire, because this comes from your leadership, your business, your overall business model and things like that. So these will be given more importance on your overall governance structure. So this is how it varies, the three pillars of ESG and the KPIs under these ESG across different sectors that varies. So for 77 different types of industries, they are able to put down these KPIs, which is the standard becomes actually a guide who is starting from scratch as such. So this is very, very important exercise for a company to look at, any organization for that matter. So this actually aligns towards their environmental impact as well. So the companies which are looking at the processing area, mineral processing. So here, whatever their GHG emissions are, they could be cut down. Their energy consumption can be cut off by a renewable energy, solar, wind, or any other support. But end of the day, their manufacturing process in itself, there will be a lot of emissions at the process level. So cutting down that, whether it needs a new technology, there's a huge investment that will come under. There will be a transfer of technology knowledge from a developed country to a developing country. So there are many things that are involved in this. And this is what is actually, a huge major impact in our climate change in itself. And these companies really need to address their GHG emissions and their operations, which is a key performing indicator for them. So moving on, coming to TCFD. TCFD, as I said, this runs over 4 major core elements. The overall, the governance being the first one, the organization's governance and around climate-related risk and opportunities. And the second one being the overall how organization strategy against the potential impacts of climate-related risk and opportunities. And what is the the organization strategy and financial planning under for these risks. The third one being the overall risk management, how the organization identifies these risks, assesses them, and manages these climate related risks. What is their mitigation plan? What is their resiliency targets? So these are the the 3 major things, and the fourth one being the overall metrics and targets. So metrics and targets are nothing but when you assess all this, you need to identify and quantify them to a number. So as in SASB, when I was showing you the different KPIs, each and every KPI can actually be either be qualitative or a quantitative metric assigned towards it. There are certain things like on the governance aspect which are qualitative, like your business ethics or code of conduct or your overall the overall ABAC policy in the company. What is the how independent is the board and things like that. Those could be around qualitative measurement around it. But things like in the energy management, your water management, or your waste management, or even in your social aspect, whether the parity or the men to women ratio or the employee health and insurance, there are many different aspects to which there needs to be a metrics and targets that needs to be visioned by a company towards achieving this. Either it is a net zero emission that they are targeting, or they want to target a carbon neutral company, or their overall ESG score in itself, to be looked at. So this is how, the TCFD core elements work around. So if you look at the overall mapping, how TCFD, this is, as I said, this is a guidance from TCFD on overall in your reporting. And this is your overall an organization also to look at. The first one being the risk. which we already saw in very detail, the transition risk, whether it is a policy, legal, technology, or the market requirement, or a reputation. The second one being the physical risk, the actual climate change risk, whether it's an acute or a chronic risk, identifying these risks, and also identifying the different opportunities that is available for the organization, whether it is a resource efficiency or an energy source, or products and services, resilience. So putting these both together, risk and the opportunities, the governance structure of the company needs to come up with a strategic planning addressing the overall risk management in the company and what this is going to have the overall financial impact in the organization, whether it's revenue, expenditure, or their assets, how this entire thing is going to transfer into their financial. So there is a quick thought, sometimes it's just only the financial aspect of a company. Then the times, has stopped long back for an organization to look at only their financial impact. The non-financial parameters have taken in charge right now in the specific to climate change. A company that starts looking at their financial impact, considering a climate change, the climate risk, and other opportunities that is available in the market, they are going to be the future leaders in this space. Coming to overall, when you look at how this TCFD provides recommendations and how the supporting recommended disclosure needs to be coming around in their reporting. If you look at the governance side, yes, the overall recommended disclosure goes around how you just describe the board's oversight of climate-related risk and opportunities. You describe a management's role in assessing and managing climate-related risk and opportunities. So the governance structure actually, it's a top-down approach. First, you do all the exercise in respect to risk, metric, targets. That is how overall the governance itself, dictates these terms to the entire organization. The second one being strategy. You describe the impact of climate-related risk and opportunity on the organization, businesses, strategies, and financial planning. And you go ahead and describe the overall resilience of the organization strategy, taking into consideration the different climate-related scenarios, including the overall temperature rise of 2 degrees or lower scenario. The third one being the risk management. Here, you describe the overall organization's process of identifying these risks, climate-related risk, and assessing them, and describe the process, the overall that has been managed for this, and what is the mitigation plan around this for managing this climate-related risk, each and everything individually. The third being disclosing the overall metrics and targets used. This is going to be again, it's simple as GHG. It can be explained as scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 GHG emissions. There is other targets in respect to your social and the governance aspect as well. Even here, not only on energy part, the overall material consumption, your supply chain management, your coming to each and every target that is set against the KPIs that we saw. So here I'm going to show you in detail. I'm going to show you how this is going to look like in a real reporting scenario. I hope you're able to see my screen. These are publicly available reports. So this is one of the company's TCFD report, which shows the overall how this report goes about, their summary, their governance strategy, the risk management targets, and the overall attendance. So it gives a vision of this and what are the TCFD recommendations on overall for this company, and their executive summary, what has been done, how they're overall supporting the transition to net zero. So each and every of this requires a lot of research and backwork that goes upon how they're, the technology to measure climate risk for them. They're developing even a platform for such. you look at overall in net zero commitments, what is their overall, the governance and their vision around the net zero commitments. Coming to the key points in response to the TCFD recommendation. So they look at overall governance, how they disclose the governance around climate related. They describe about it, how they are nominating the board, the governance and sustainability committee that comes in picture, and the overall executive committee, how they set the strategic vision and priorities of the firm. And they move forward saying what is their strategy around this, and what are the risks that they are looking at, whether it's market, regulatory, or reputational risk, or as well as physical risk, and how they conducted, how did they perform, describe the entire resilience of the organization strategy, including this 2 degrees Celsius temperature control, how they have done this. And this is a big exercise in background. So there is a, and the standard also provides you in detail how do you go about the overall ESG integration, and for each and every item you have a guide on the standard. So this is how, this is just an example that I'm showing you. As if you look at overall, how are they looking at, for example, their water, clean water and sanitation, how much water savings they have achieved, how much homes powered with clean energy. This is again to the communities what they are giving back. In respect to climate action, how much emissions they have actually avoided emitting. So that is reduction. This is again an energy management exercise that goes through this. And overall, what they have done to for the work and decent economic growth, or how much amount of jobs that they have supported. So come to these, these standards are, as I said, it's only a overall guidance. To reach to these each level is a huge exercise that requires. Though these standards overall, when I'm talking on this is again a home, another company on a lot of which works with a lot of materials in the market in respect to wood and plastics. If you look at them, they have gone around SASB reporting. So what are the areas of, as I was saying about the materiality map here, they've identified here what is their area of focus. They've identified at least some 10 items: people, communities, climate change, natural resources, chemical concerns, waste and recycling. Because it's not actually a possible, I wouldn't say impossible. Yes, it's possible to address all the KPIs, but it doesn't become a KPI. All the aspects under E, S, and G, but the companies have to start prioritizing which are the important ones, and which has financial impact over the company, the strategy that they have to build around and address each and everything, which are more important. And there is a lot of tools that are available to even look at your materiality mapping, which a company should start their exercise with. So if you look at their materiality map, they have looked at their priority touch points and who are the key impacted stakeholders, whether it's associates, customers, suppliers, governments, NGOs, investors, local community, academics and education. And under that, they have identified their key performance indicators. For example, associate well-being, diversity, equity and inclusion, governance. If you look at on the E part of it, energy use, hazardous materials, waste and water use, and sustainable products, the product development, which I talked about in SASB, they touched upon the eco products, the end of life of products, which addresses circularity, waste and recycling, manufacturing process. So they've looked at what is their impact and how did they try and address this. So they come back and come to knowing what is their overall KPIs addressed, and under each of these, see how they have envisioned it and how they are trying to reduce this or certain things that needs to be increased. For example, just women among new hires, how they've increased from 33 to 36% almost. And if you look at carbon emissions, their estimated reduction in respect to GHG emissions, they started with 6.9 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent, and they reduced it and they have increased it up to 7.5 million ton reduction. and in specific to what is their scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And scope 3, I think they've not done, but scope 1 and scope 2, how they've tried to reduce it, or certain parts. Yes, this might be not be a absolute number, because there is a growth of the company as well, and in respect to that also this varies. So they will be giving a data set even specific to their the sales volume or the revenue. So, for example, reduction of GHG emissions from 38%, they've reached up to 47%. Responsive, similar way. So each and everything, these was the materiality map that I was talking about. They need to be identified. There needs to be a metric defined against it. And how do you implement it across your organization in itself is a challenge. These are the actual operation that you go about. And so if you look at, they have told about different ratings, what is their ESG score, and how these are the different raters under which they've got their ESG ratings. What are the recognitions? So if you quickly go around in the, typically this can be, anyone interested in knowing more on this should be going to their, ideally to look at their index in the last, where they address exactly which standard the entire reports. For example, they've also addressed TCFD framework. So in respect to governance, which part of the report needs to be referred under, say, for example, corporate governance or the ESG priority assessment. So these are the key words that these regulatory standards require for your ESG reporting. So, and this is how it is cross-verified in these reports. So respect to CDP, they say under their strategy, where and all they have addressed these requirements of CDP reporting. In respect to SASB, this is respect to SASB, the different KPIs and the type of metric, whether it is quantitative or a qualitative metric, what is their unit of measurements and the code for that specific, and what is their reference set, and where do you refer this in the report back. So this is how, this is the disclosure matrix that's been done. So this is how they, typical ESG reporting looks like. I think, as I was saying, the ESG report should be an outcome of that entire vision of the organization. It is not the reporting in itself shouldn't be a target for any company. But these KPIs and metrics needs to be taken very seriously and addressed to. And this output, as I was saying, this ESG report should be an outcome of this entire vision and their mitigation plan towards climate risk. I hope I have given a brief, or a more, I would say, a brief introduction on the entire regulatory landscape over this. And I thank CRFC for this opportunity on overall.